Welcome back into the Rounding Third podcast. I'm Nick. We got Harrison and Sean again tonight. How are we doing, fellas?
Good, man. Good.
Awesome. 4 sleeps until we roll out of town here.
Indeed.
4 sleeps, man.
Yep.
We got Baltimore on Friday. Can't wait. First trip to Camden Yards for me. I'm so pumped. But
yeah, it's my favorite ballpark.
Yeah,
Is it really?
I've been to it, never in it, because they were either out of town or it was off season when I came through.
Oh,
so
shit.
yeah, never been
Yeah,
inside of it, so I'm looking forward to
So
it.
the young guy in the group is going to have to lead you guys around.
Pretty much, yeah.
Perfect.
I'm okay with that.
Perfect.
It's about time we got something out of Sean. Other than the rantings of Aaron Boone.
Well, that's coming.
They're worth
Wait
it.
for
They're
it.
worth it.
They are worth it.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Before we get going, make sure you follow and like us on Facebook. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can also listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
There we go.
Podcasts.
Attaboy, Nick.
Okay. Leading off, we're going to start with Randy Arozarena hitting an absolute bomb off the Yankees, rounding third base, and he stops and does his patented arm crossed pose, then finishes his home run trot, and then proceeds to get pegged by the Yankees in the next 2 at-bats.
Yep.
Now, I think that's proper retaliation if the Yankees don't like it. That's fine. You know, there's people out there that are saying that, you know, Randy shouldn't be doing that. Like, do it after you cross home plate or whatever. My thought on it is like, hey, like if you don't like him doing what he does, like Randy Arozarena is swaggy, right? That's who he is. It's no secret. If you don't want him to do that, don't give up a pecker high fastball that he hits 400 feet. Okay. Another example of this is the Padres beat Clayton Kershaw in San Diego the other night. And the Padres put up a Padres win, and it's Clayton Kershaw with crying, like tears coming down his cheek.
I think the Michael Jordan crying face, but Clayton Kershaw's face.
Right. And when Clayton Kershaw was asked about it, he said, I just need to pitch better if I don't want to see that.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's kind of the mentality that I think the Yankees should take. But, however, I mean, they plunked him twice, both at bats. I think it's over. It's done with. But what are your thoughts on that whole situation?
Yeah, I think hitting a guy twice is a bit much, but I also think stopping halfway around third base and doing a pose is a bit much as well. So like maybe I guess it evens out. I don't care, man. I mean, like baseball's fun. Baseball's a fun game. It's an emotional game. Like every other game, every other sport is emotions are flying high, and guys have their signature thing that they do when they score a touchdown or
even a first
score
down
a goal or hit a big three. I mean, you see the guys in the NBA with the vein thing, like they all have stuff that they do. Like right. Like life goes on. Yeah. It doesn't really bother me. I guess baseball's kind of so late to catch on with that because the old white guys that are just like, this is so bad for the game, but it's not bad for the game.
No,
I don't think it's bad for the game at all. I think hitting a guy twice is a bit much, but I'm not losing any sleep over it.
When your team is 120-4 to start the season, I think you can be a little swaggy. Like,
and not just that, but when you're in the middle of it, like when you're largely coming up with the major plays that are winning ball games for them, like whatever, man, you do what you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's arguably been the MVP of the best team in baseball. He's got a reason to strut a little bit,
and we're talking about a guy that signed autographs in the middle of a WBC game. Like, are we surprised that he did this rounding third base?
Right, and he's done it in the middle of pitching changes too. Like he's out in the field.
He made that ridiculous catch from Mexico, and then in between batters, he was signing baseballs and throwing them back over the fence. Like, are we surprised?
No. I mean, I agree with the point you guys made. I think Arozarena, I mean, he is who he is. We know who he is. He's flashy, he's swaggy, and that's part of what gives that Tampa Bay Rays team a bit of an edge is that they follow his lead. But was stopping around third and crossing your arms and giving that little showdown face, a bit much? Probably. But so was hitting a guy twice. That was probably a bit much. Mm-hmm. I mean, to be an old white guy for a minute and talk about being a baseball purist, like you don't show the opposing team up like that and expect nothing to happen. So you have to hit him. Like, he has to get drilled in his next at bat. The second one was probably unnecessary. But back to the point of, if you don't want him to strut like that, then don't let him beat you. You don't let him hit a ball a mile.
Right.
And it's, and the funny thing in the whole thing is, if I remember how it happened correctly, he gets hit a second time, and Kevin Cash got thrown out arguing it. And it wasn't Aaron Boone just stood on the stairs and watched the whole thing unfold, kind of laughing to himself when Kevin Cash lost his mind and got ejected from the game for arguing how it was handled. So the whole thing is the whole thing was a bit bizarre, but
Yeah.
But extreme on both sides. But like Sean, I'm not losing sleep over it. It was a hell of a good series between those two teams.
It was.
He's are struggling right now. They're trying to prove they're not just going to be rolled over. They dropped
And listen,
the Rays, and we're not going to take that sitting down.
And the Yankees, man. I mean, this is a team that they've had injury problems since spring training, right? So I mean, they came into this. They came into the season with a banged up roster, and then you hear about Carlos Rodon. I mean, like all the terrible stuff going on with him. I mean, we don't even know when we're going to see him. But Garrett Cole was the one guy all year for them that was just shoving. Every 5 days he was coming out and shoving. They gave him a 6-0 lead, and Tampa took it away like that.
I know, quick, and it was decisively.
So impressive the way that Tampa Bay, they spotted one of the best pitchers up until this point, one of the best pitchers in the American League. They spotted him 6, not 2 or 3, 6 runs.
Yep.
And he just shit down his leg.
The Baltimore Orioles are 22-12. They are 10 games over 500, and they're 5.5 games back. Like that is just unreal. The Rays still haven't even lost double-digit games. They've only lost 7 ball games.
Baltimore is leading every other division in baseball except for the NL East, where they're only a game back. And they're 5.5 games behind Tampa. Like, it's.
I mean, hell, the Yankees could be leading a couple divisions at 18 and 17.
The Red Sox would be leading 3 out of the 6 divisions in baseball right now, and they're sitting in 4th place.
With this balanced schedule, it will not surprise me if the AL East finishes over 500. I like all the teams do.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's just absolutely crazy, but. All right, now that we're talking about historic starts, let's talk about that St. Louis Cardinals start. So the other end of the spectrum.
Oh, God.
These guys get absolutely manhandled by the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. And the games weren't even really that close. Like they got smoked out of their own building. And the Boo Birds came out in Cardinal. In Busch Stadium,
which doesn't happen.
They were all over the Cardinals after that series ended. I'm lost on the Cardinals. Me and Sean were talking a little bit before. I feel like at this point, Goldschmidt and Arenado kind of need to take this team and not manage the X and O's part of it, but manage the morale part of it, because clearly Marmol has zero clue what he's doing, because like you said a couple weeks ago, Harrison, like kind of blew his load, right? And then now he's got nowhere to go. And this team has not responded. In fact, they've gone completely the opposite way.
Well, and they finally win a game the other night when Goldschmidt hits 3 home runs. They've got to score 12 runs to do it, because they can't put together a complete game. They can't get a decent pitching outing with a decent amount of offense. They've not played stellar defense, but it hasn't killed them. The pitching's been really bad at times. The offense has been really bad at times. And it seems like they just can't put it together, where there's always some piece of that team. It's either the offense or defense, or the offense or the pitching, that is really struggling. They can't balance them out. And the problem with the Cardinals is they're middle of the pack and everything. So like they're stuck in this cycle of mediocrity where they're just good enough offensively to put up some runs, but not good enough pitching wise to give up fewer. And they can't seem to get it together where they have good offense and good pitching at the same time. There's always one of them that's not working.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think even on a higher level, I mean, it's just, we expected more from them. I certainly did. I had them to win the division, for crying out loud.
Me too.
And I thought coming off of the home stretch that they had last year, August and September. They played well. I mean, it was a team that had high expectations. They went out and added a catcher. I just thought they really added some key pieces. I think the manager really screwed the pooch with the calling out of Tyler O'Neill at the beginning of the year. It was kind of that's kind of one of the moves where, like, if it doesn't work, it's like, where do you go from here? And I wonder if that was one of those things where if you do something like that and then you go on a streak where you win 4 out of 5 or 6 out of 7, then it's like, all right, we didn't like that he did it, but like, this is a resilient bunch. This is a clubhouse that believes in each other. We picked Tyler up. Tyler's back to playing his kind of game, yada, yada. It went the opposite direction. Yep. I mean, I think they lost 7 straight after that. I'll have to look. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw that they lost 7 in a row after that.
They did. You're right.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden it's like we have a manager that calls us out in the media instead of handling things the way we wanted him to handle it. We have a bunch of guys that are disgruntled about that. We don't play the way that we want to play. We can't get pitching when you need it. When we finally get pitching, we can't get hitting. It's like all these things are just coming crashing down on top of each other. It's hard, man. And you don't have a Pujols, so you don't have, a veteran Hall of Fame guy that you're just used to. I mean, you got Goldie and you got Arenado. I'm not entirely sure they're the, like, call a players only meeting, get the boys going type of guys. Like, they seem to be, to me, and I don't know these guys on a personal level, so this might not be a fair thing to say, but they strike me as like a lead by example. Like, they're the first guys in, they're the last guys out. They take extra batting practice, and they, consummate professionals, but they just want to play baseball. Like, they just want to go out there and play baseball and win baseball games.
Yeah.
And I just, it's almost unfair that they're now responsible for this kind of extra level that this organization has put them in right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I think there's a big shake-up coming. I mean, we'll get to it. My question of the week was, who do you think the first manager is that will be fired in 2023? Possibly could be going down that way. But the Cardinals have a plethora of outfielders. They could probably deal some of those guys away to get some pitching.
Well, and as of today, Nick, they've made a bunch of them available. Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carlson, Alec Burleson, Juan Yepez. They're basically asking for trade offers on those guys. And Tyler O'Neill, they're willing to just discard at this point. They just don't want him. And he's not even healthy right now, so it doesn't matter. But
right.
The Cardinals are looking to move on from him, and in the meantime, they're dragging poor Wilson Contreras through the mud here, blaming his defense and his preparation as the reason they're not winning. When in reality, you look at Montgomery's been good. Miles Mikolas has been terrible. He's got an ERA of almost 6. This is a guy that was going to be an absolute anchor. And we said going into the season, Sean and I both picked the Cardinals to win the division. And both of us said the only question with them really is the pitching. Like, are they going to have enough pitching? Do they have good enough pitching? Because they don't have a lot of depth there. That's a very thin rotation. It's a lot of young arms. And the rotation's third worst in the league, behind only the Reds and the Reds and the A's. Like, their starting rotation is a third worst in the league. The only guy pitching well is Montgomery. So this is not you can say that maybe Wilson Contreras isn't as good a catcher as Yadi Molina, but he's not that bad a catcher that the pitching staff has forgotten how to get people out.
Dude, but nobody's Yadi Molina.
Right. But you also didn't go get Wilson Contreras because of his ability to call games. Oh, he's a liability offensively, but he calls games great. Like, no, it's the exact opposite. Like, you went and got him because you knew you were going to take a step back on that side of the ball, but you were going to be so much better offensively. So to then turn around and be like kind of blaming it on him, so I just don't like that. But
no,
I mean, it really looks like the Marmol, and then also the general manager Mozeliak. These guys look like this is the first time they've dealt with real trouble in St. Louis in a while, and they are like scrambling to find somebody to blame it on versus just going and addressing the issue. And if I'm the Cardinals ownership, I'm looking at that leadership group right now saying, I need you guys to fix it and stop trying to figure out who you're going to blame for it, because there's too much talent here to be sitting where we're at.
Dude, way too much talent.
Way too much talent.
Like that Nolan Gorman's an absolute animal.
Yep.
I mean, Goldschmidt, Arenado, Contreras. You go down that roster and it's full of better than average Major League Baseball players, and they're 11-24.
Yep.
And,
Yeah, and they're too good to be where they're sitting, and they're 14th. Offensively, they're the 14th team, and they're 14th best in the league.
I can't even believe they're that high.
Which isn't terrible.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of it's come in short spurts, and then they're 20th pitching wise, and it's all their starters are like an almost 6 ERA. It's atrocious what their starters have done, but their bullpen's been pretty good. They just can't string it together. But there's too much talent. And then they were in the same spot the Red Sox have been in, where the Red Sox finally had the offense heat up. They're giving up a lot of runs. They're constantly playing from behind. The Red Sox have been able to grind it out and take those games. The Cardinals have not. And they're very similar. I mean, when you look at where they are statistically pitching wise, they're neck and neck. The difference is the Red Sox are able to outscore their pitching problems. The Cardinals just haven't been able to.
Yep. Let's switch gears right to the Red Sox. I mean, they went on a 7-game winning streak. 3 or 4 of those were from behind. Alex Verdugo, absolute clutch. I mean, nice slap in the left center gap to end the game, and then hits a walk-off home run like 2 nights later. I mean,
it's crazy.
We've talked about it before. His knowledge of the strike zone is something to marvel at, because I've never seen him swing on a pitch out of the zone. It's crazy.
Very rarely.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll say I was very critical early in the first month of the season of the Red Sox approach at the plate, and I was even saying that they were putting up decent runs and putting up decent offensive numbers in spite. I just didn't like the approach. Boy, have they corrected it. I mean, gone are the days of the first months of the season where we're just taking fastballs down the middle and then flailing away at breaking pitches. Like, I don't know what the hitting coach did, and Fats, I don't know how you pronounce his last name, but I mean,
I thought you were
listen,
describing
man,
me there for a minute.
Listen, I was hard on him. I was saying that I didn't know if he was the right guy for the. Boy, was I wrong. I mean, this has been up and down the lineup. And I said there were 2 guys in the lineup at the moment at that time a month ago, and I wouldn't change their approach. One was Verdugo, because he's been awesome all year. And the second one is Raffy. And although I didn't love his approach, Raffy's one of those guys that as long as he's comfortable in the box, he can send one to the seats. So it's like, listen, man, if you're comfortable with your approach, whatever. Like it's fine, because if you're comfortable in the box, he can send one to the seats at any time. And
apparently
Raffy hates first base because he just doesn't hit singles anymore. No, he doesn't stop at first ever.
Crazy. It's crazy.
Youkilis the other night was talking about what really changed the tone of their hitting was Tristan Casas's 18 pitch at bat that he drew a walk on in Tampa. And that like woke everybody up. Like Kike talked about it on Fox, was like when they were doing the on-field stuff, Kike was like, yeah, like that bat was incredible. And like, it's something I saw, and it kind of like almost like snapped me out of it. And like, you're right. Like their whole approach has changed. Like Raffy's attacking first pitch fastballs like crazy. I mean, these hitters aren't sitting back and watching that middle fastball go right down the middle for strike one.
Yeah. And I Kike is still one of those guys. He has sneaky pop, but he's not Manny.
He does.
Like, and the sooner he realizes that he's not Manny, like, I mean, he was in that period of time, he was either striking out or it was like a weak pop up to the left side of the infield. It's like everything's flying open. His shoulder's flying open. He's way ahead of these pitches. But when he's thinking up the middle, like when he was on that postseason tear in 2021, the home runs were there, but it was solid contact up the middle, which is what he was doing every at bat. So when he's on pitches and he's seeing and he's staying on those breaking pitches and everything's up the middle, I mean, this is the Kike we saw at the end of 2021. So if he can do that in the bottom part of the lineup, this team is going to continue to be just as scary, because I don't think any of these are fluky. Like Yoshida's not a fluke. Verdugo's not a fluke. Raffy with the home run and the power and the RBI numbers is not a fluke.
No.
If anything, you're getting Duvall back. You're getting Trevor Story back. Tristan Casas is a better hitter than a 148 average he's got now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's
is it bad to prove that?
Yeah. If anything, you're going to get better offensively.
Yeah. I agree, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Because they're like top 3 offense right now, which
I mean, I said at the beginning of the year, I I had this team as an 85 to an 88 win team simply because they were going to score enough runs to just run into a whole lot of wins.
Yep.
And I mean, we're early on. We're certainly early on. I'm not taking a bow right now, but this is not necessarily surprising to me. And they still have guys that are going to come back and be better.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say it. I was a skeptic because I didn't think that the offense was going to be this good. I mean, again, I know it's only 1 month, but I didn't expect a stretch like we just saw in the last 8 games. I really wasn't expecting that. And I mean, we'll get right to Masataka Yoshida. He gets player of the week. This dude hit 500 this week, right? It was like 486 or something like that. He has found major league pitching. Like, he is on it now. I think his hitting is here to stay.
Sorry, the Chicago Blackhawks just got the #1 pick on the lottery. Sorry, I was just
all good.
I was sorry, not paying attention.
But yeah, I mean, his approach, he has found it. He has clicked in, and he is going to be really fun to watch in the next 5 years in Boston.
Yeah, I think Yoshida is he was a better hitter than he was the prior couple weeks when he was just rolling everything over, and he's finally hitting things on the line. I'm not necessarily I'm still a skeptic on the Red Sox because you can only out hit your pitching problems for so long, and they've had a hell of a hot streak here. They also faced a scuffling Toronto team, and they've also faced a really bad Philadelphia team.
Hold on, real quick. The Toronto team that the Red Sox beat had won their previous 3 games with a team ERA of 0.87. And then they came into Boston and they got their lunch fed to them. And then they left Boston and then they fed Pittsburgh's lunch to them. So, like, that Toronto team, we can call them a scuffling team, but, like, that was a team that was pitching really, really well, struggling hitting the ball. They were struggling to score runs. They weren't on a tear offensively. But that was a team that was pitching the ball very well, and the Red Sox demolished that pitching staff.
They did. I mean, and Alek Manoah was terrible. Like, he was terrible in that whole game. And it was less about him getting hit. It was more about the fact the dude was gassed. Like, he was literally like huffing between pitches.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is now that we're getting into May, you're going to start to see what the pitch clock does to pitchers. As temperatures rise, as hitters start to adjust, as counts go deeper, you're starting to see some pitchers really struggle with the pitch clock. Alek Manoah has really struggled lately with the pitch clock. And he's a big dude. Like, that is a big boy. That is not a guy that's out there running marathons. And he was in Boston, like, wheezing in the 5th inning, to the point where I think the Blue Jays actually called they had a mound visit just to give the guy a breather, because he was huffing and puffing through the inning. So, yeah, I mean, Philadelphia's a mess, and they handled Philadelphia. Toronto's a good team. They are Jekyll and Hyde, and they handled them. The Red Sox trailed in almost every one of those games, though. Like, the story of the Red Sox is bad starting pitching, offense that overcomes it, bullpen that holds on. And that's a great story, but it's not a story that's going to last 162 games. So for me to buy into where the Red Sox are going, we need to see that starting pitching stabilize a little bit, so the offense doesn't have to continually crank out 7, 8, 9 runs a game to win, because you're taking advantage of the balanced schedule to get to that win total. But in division, they'll get roasted if they cannot balance it out a little bit. And I do think that Cora's done a better job the last couple weeks with the bullpen. He's done a better job with the lineup because it looks like Yoshida's finally found a spot where he fits. So some of that noise is gone. The Red Sox approach has gotten better. And the Red Sox, that Red Sox team could win 90 friggin' games. I'm just not believing the story yet, because when you look at the stats and you look at how they've played, that's not a great team. That is a team that is overcoming a massive, massive deficiency in their roster through just brute force right now.
Yeah, and I mean, Doug makes a great point that Jarren Duran has absolutely looked.
He's looked great,
really good.
He's looked great.
He's hitting like 430 something, I think, in his last couple weeks, or since being back up. I mean, that's a nice surprise, because I mean, going into the season, we didn't really know who our third outfielder was going to be. Like, there was a lot of question marks. and who was going to take it. Duvall going down, that brings Jarren Duran back up, and he has come back up, and he's here to stay. He ain't going anywhere. So, I mean, I think he's overachieved a little bit, but he's looked great, and I'm gonna take it.
Let's just go back.
The problem is if Duvall does come back, that's the guy that gets his playing time cut most likely. But the Red Sox right now are averaging almost 6 runs a game. If they scored 6 runs a game for the whole season, they'll be one of 8 teams in Major League history to score 1,000 runs in a season. They just won't do that.
No, probably not.
They won't keep
probably
that.
not.
They won't keep that pace up forever. But you can't give up 5 runs a game for the whole season either, and have that work out.
Right, but it as bad as the starting pitching has been since the Rays series. So the Rays series ended on Wednesday or Thursday, April 13th. So starting Friday, that was the series that LA came in, right?
Yep.
In the wins. Now, I'm not talking about the losses, and I recognize this is cherry picking stats, but that's what stats do. You cherry pick them. But just for the purpose of the argument, a handful of wins that followed for the Red Sox. These are the amount of runs they gave up in the wins, not the amount of runs they scored, because a lot of these wins were blowouts where we scored 10, 11 runs.
Right.
But just the amount of runs they gave up. They beat the Angels, they gave up 3. They beat the Angels, they gave up 7. That's a big one. They beat the Angels, they gave up 1. Then they beat the Twins, they gave up 4. They beat the Twins, they gave up 5. They beat the Brewers, they gave up 3. They beat the Brewers, they gave up 5. They lost to the Orioles. Beat the Orioles, gave up 6. Lost to the Orioles. Lost to the Guardians. Beat the Guardians, gave up 1, 7-1. Beat the Blue Jays, gave up 5. So, I mean, we're doing it. We're not – these games aren't 10-8 wins the whole time. Like, we're doing enough, and I think the point I'm trying to make is the starting pitching can certainly be better. No question about it. It has to be better. Not can be better, has to be better. But even in this terrible starting pitching that they have, the starting pitching is doing certainly enough to keep the offense in the games. The offense has certainly had to come back from behind. They've got more come from behind wins this year than they did last year already.
It's crazy.
Which is crazy.
It is. It just also because they're always down early. Like they're consistently playing from behind.
Well, and they didn't have a bullpen that could hold it last year.
Right. And they fixed that.
Right, but the being down early is 1-0, 2-0, 2-1s. Like that's, and I hate to say it, that like that's not a deficit to this team. Being down 1 run is nothing to this team.
Right.
And quite frankly, being down 1 is nothing to good baseball teams. And I think that is a check mark in the box that I think the Red Sox are a good team. Do I think they're great? No. But like they're a good rounded baseball team. And I think they take like you've heard for solo home runs are not going to beat you.
No.
If you're a good baseball team. If you're a bad baseball team, solo home runs will beat you. The Red Sox have done a decent job, I think, from just watching these games, these starting pitchers. They're obsessed with giving up home runs, but most of them are solo jobs.
Yeah.
Most of them are solo home runs. And I think they've done well enough to keep you in the game. I don't think you can rely on it, but while you're working out your problems on the starting rotation, you're still 9 games or whatever it is over 500 because offensively, you're just able to overcome small deficits. Yep. And as long as they can keep the games close, the bullpen's been great.
I think also to like piggyback your point about the approach at the plate is the Red Sox aren't relying on the long ball with anybody. Mm-hmm. If they run into a long ball, they run into a long ball. I mean, obviously Devers goes up and swings from his butt every single time, but that's how he hits. But they're not going up looking for that solo jack, that 2-run jack. They keep the line moving, and then that's when they're piling on the runs. And it's been impressive to watch. But Doug makes another great point about Duran's approach. You know, like he says that, you know, when he first came up, he did look like Jacoby Ellsbury a little bit, just trying to like slap it, kind of put it in play, use his speed. He has bulked up a little bit, changes his approach. I mean, Jarren Duran is the real deal. He looks really good right now. So
let me give you a status reference just to kind of make the point I'm trying to make. In the American League, the Red Sox have given up more runs than everybody except for the Athletics, the Royals, and the White Sox. The Detroit Tigers have given up almost 1 run per game less, and that's a team that we consider to be atrocious. Now they can't score, but you can only out hit your problems for so long, and the Red Sox are not good against teams that are good. So you can absolutely pick on the weak teams.
Well, how are the Red Sox not good against
they're
teams?
They're 500
that are
team
good?
against. They're 500 against teams that are better than 500. When you look at they're 500 against teams that are better than 500. They really beat the crap out of bad teams. So the balanced schedule is going to help.
Which
them,
bad teams?
sure.
They've got the second most difficult schedule so far in Major League Baseball. They haven't played bad teams. I mean, who's the bad teams they've played?
They are.
I mean, they took 2 out of 3 from Cleveland.
Yeah,
Philly. 2 out of 3 from
Philly.
Cleveland. 2 out of 3 from Philly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise,
they're playing pretty much 500 ball right now, right? What's their record?
They've got the second hardest schedule so far in baseball. They've only played good teams.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I disagree with you, but if you're going to be 500 against teams that are better than 500, you're going to have to absolutely pound on the lesser teams. You can't give those games up if you're going to be better than a 500 team. But you've given up the 4th most runs in the American League. You've given up way more than all your division mates. So you're going to have to either continue to feast on the weak teams to boost that record, or you're going to have to find a way to actually get that pitching back under control where you're not consistently giving up 5 runs a game. Because if you're going to give up 5 runs a game and you're going to count on scoring 6, you'll be one of only 8 teams in baseball history to score 1,000 runs in a season. That offense is not that good. They're not going to score 1,000 runs in a season. They've got to find a way to bring this back to the middle so you're not relying on that offense every night to come out and give you 6 runs, because you just won't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, which I mean, Sean said, and I agree. Like the starting pitching has to be better than it is currently. But I mean, we'll see. I mean, it's 1 month in, and we'll see. I mean, it's been fun to watch them the last 10 games for sure.
I think they will be better. I mean, Chris Sale's 2 out of 3 have been good. I mean, the one in the middle was a dud. But 2 out of 3 have been good. He's got the stuff is bad. I mean, he's high 90s on the fastball. He's getting the strikeout swings and misses.
Yeah.
Like I think they'll be better. I don't know. I think this is a team that's just a little bit above 500, and it's kind of what I had said at the beginning. It's what I expected, and it's not far off. Right now, when they were in that middle, we're on like a 93 win pace. It's like that's a bit much. I mean, they're not going to win 93 games.
Right.
But I think they're a little bit above. I think the starting pitching will be a little bit better. I don't think the bullpen's a fluke. I think Kenley Jansen is really, really good.
Well,
really,
people
really
wanted to write Jansen off as he was too old. He wasn't going to be good anymore. He's been maybe better than he's been in years.
And he wants to be here. Like
swings and
that's a big
misses.
thing. Yeah.
His swings and misses stuff has been fantastic.
Well, and what's amazing to me is the fact that this bullpen was so bad last year. And they clearly made that a priority in the offseason, and it worked. So you've got a team that is hitting. You got a bullpen that's good. If you can just get the starting pitching to be a little bit better, this is a dangerous team. It really is a dangerous team.
And a little bit better.
You cannot have Corey Kluber give up 4 runs in the first 2 innings every time out.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, a little bit better too. Simply what we're asking for is just be 1 run better per 9 innings.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, just be 1 run better per 9 innings.
Yeah.
Just 1.
And I don't think they're that far off. You can't out hit your pitching all season. You've got to find a way to get those guys to give you more.
No, and now my final piece on this is they can do it for now.
Yep.
And they are doing it now. And what you're doing right now is hopefully buying time for that starting pitching to come around for the dog days of summer.
Yep.
But if you're night in, night out in July asking your team to score 8 runs a game in order to win, it's a futile attempt. So I'm agreeing with you 100%, Harrison. I have a little bit more hope, and I have a little bit more positivity towards it than I think you do. But we're on the same page there.
Yeah, and I would love for this Red Sox team to continue to do this. I look at that rotation, I look at the lack of depth, and with this team, they are always that one bad night away from being in serious trouble down the stretch. But I go back to, I believe in what Heimblum is doing. I feel like this team is heading in the right direction. This is very much a bridge year. They are still talented. They could definitely make some noise, but you've just got to get more out of that starting pitching staff.
Yeah.
And I do think what's been interesting in this whole thing is that Duvall goes out and Jared Duran, who we all had a really bad taste in our mouth, comes up, and he's been
sure.
freaking lights out.
Defensively too.
Exactly.
He's been great defensively.
He's been great.
Yeah.
So it kind of leads you to believe, when Duvall comes back, wow, now you've got too many outfielders. Like, this was not a problem we were afraid we were going to have.
I know.
You might actually have a guy who's proving he can play at this level that a lot of us wrote off because he had such a bad season last year.
So speaking of outfielders, and I brought up Yoshida earlier, I know when I say we overpaid for Yoshida, I'm talking about at first, before we knew who he was, like just the broad scope, the league thought that the Red Sox overpaid for Yoshida. Was this the Red Sox playing long ball for a possible free agent in 2024 that could bring him to Boston? Could we see Shohei Ohtani in Boston in 2024 with him and Yoshida?
Theoretically, sure. I don't think
anything is possible, right? I mean, if the Red Sox aren't going to give Mookie Betts $30 million a year, they're not going to give Shohei 40 or 50 or whatever he's going to ask. It's a great theory because apparently he and Yoshida are relatively close and have a lot of respect for each other, but I don't see Shohei Ohtani coming to Boston.
If you're an organization and he's a once in a lifetime player.
Yeah.
Oh, you make your pitch.
Yeah.
No, you make your pitch for sure. You don't not try.
Right.
You just don't put your eggs in the basket. You make your pitch. You call Shohei's people and you're like, hey man, like Yoshi, ask Masa. He loves it here. He wants you to come. And I'm sure you've talked to Masa. Like, this is what we'll offer you. This is what we can give you. And, I'm sure they'll make it a nice package. But let's just put it this way. The package that the Red Sox offer is not going to be the winning package, because some team out there, probably the Dodgers, is just going to, they'll literally give him like ownership of the team. Like, they will give him whatever he wants.
Rename the ballpark after him, you name it. But
the Sox will try.
Yeah, but even listen to Shohei talking about New York when he was there. He's got a lot of love for the Big Apple. So I think he's going to be very very coy with how he plays this, but he is clearly showing markets like New York, as he's talking about how much he loves playing there and loves the fan base and loves the atmosphere and loves the fact that there is a strong Asian and Japanese population in New York City. He was kind of flirting with them over the weekend, and he's going to do the same thing when he goes back out to the Dodgers. And there's literally probably 3 or 4 markets that realistically are going to be able to make a true run at him. And he knows that. And I think that for him, it's going to come down to one of the New Yorks and LA and
San Fran. San Fran was willing to throw all that money in Correa. I could see them trying to keep him on the West Coast.
Well, and for him, it makes sense because from the West Coast, he can get home a lot faster than he can from the East Coast. Yeah. How important that is to him, I don't know. But you're right. I think San Francisco could be another team that throws a bunch of money at him because they proved with Correa and Judge they weren't afraid to spend and they want to make some noise. Yeah. But it's going to be interesting. But I don't think Boston's a realistic landing spot for him. I don't see why he would come here over some other places.
It's fair. It was just me.
But I think Sean's right. You throw an offer at him and see what happens. But my guess is that number is going to get ridiculous. And it also depends on how you value him. Do you see him as a pitcher and hitter long term, or is he going to end up being one or the other?
And it's one of those things too. You make your offer, and if Shohei, and I'm pretty sure he's a Boris guy too, but if Shohei and Boris come back and they're like, "Hey, you're not far off," then if you're Boston, you go, "Oh, okay, like let's talk." But I don't think you go into it like expecting him to be like, "Oh, Boston's my number one." I just don't see that happening.
No, you're gonna have to blow him away.
Doug makes a good point right here. He's like, I always thought it was interesting that he didn't go to a big market team to start his career. Interesting career decision to show how good he actually is. Big fish, little pond kind of thing. So, probably smart to kind of start in Anaheim, low market franchise that hasn't really been successful, kind of get his feet wet and then make the big splash to a big market, without the pressure. Kind of makes sense. Speaking of Ohtani, he went out and had 13 Ks his last start. Is he the early Cy Young favorite? And if not, who is? He's been untouchable.
He has been.
Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. Let's see. Let me see real quick here on these.
I mean, honestly, until last week, I really thought Garrett Cole was going to
Garrett
be
Cole,
was the
right.
guy kind of leading the charge. I mean, is Shohei Ohtani at the top of the heap? Absolutely. I mean, but you also can't ignore what a guy like what a guy like Sonny Gray has done in Minnesota.
Right.
He's been
Yeah.
unhittable.
He's 4-0.
Shane
Justin
McClanahan. I mean, the guy's going to be potentially 7-0 tonight. Is he the front runner? No, but I think he's in the top four or five. Yeah, for sure. Right. If I had to pick a Cy Young winner right now, I'm taking Shane McClanahan.
Yeah, probably 6. Yeah, right. He's got a 1.7 ERA. I mean, even Erod with a 1.8 ERA. How about this? If Adam Duvall, go trade, bring Erod back.
Yeah.
If you're the Sox, go get him. Bring him back.
Yeah.
You liked him when he was here. You wanted him. He wanted to chase his bag. Detroit gave him his bag. Good for him. Bring him back.
And he had that weird off year last
fantastic.
year where he left at midseason for personal reasons, and it was a disaster.
Have you guys watched? I know they're a tough team to watch, but if you watch any of his starts, he looks awesome.
He looks great. He looks like the Erod that won 19 games for the Red Sox.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You bring him back.
I hate it.
If you bring him back, put him on this team, and then either Chris Sale just gets a little bit better, James Paxton comes in, it's just a little bit better.
Yep. Brian Bayo gets sharpened.
Like that. We talk about starting pitching needs to be better. Like that could be a linchpin for the whole thing.
It's fair.
Yeah. Fair. I think the hard part with Shohei is that, yes, Shohei's 4-0. He's got an ERA of 2.5, but he's like a full 3/4 point ERA behind the guys that are ahead of him. And I think all of that came in one start for me. He had one start where he kind of blew up, and otherwise he's been dominant. But I do think he's a top 4 or 5 pitcher in the American League. But right now I'd probably have him. He's outside the top 3 in terms of Cy Young voting for me right now.
It's fair.
I mean, to me, he's out. He's probably just outside. For me, Sonny Gray for me is probably it. He's 4-0 with a 1.35. He's thrown 40 innings. He's given up 29 hits. He hasn't given up a home run all year.
And he just pounds the zone. I mean,
he hasn't given up a home run.
Yep.
And for a guy that pounds the zone, you're going to give up some home runs because you just throw a lot of strikes. Well, and this guy doesn't.
And he doesn't throw gas.
Do you know what I heard the other night when it was random? How many career home runs has Hunter Green given up for the Cincinnati Reds?
I have no clue.
God, not
0.
Many. Yeah,
he's never given up a home run?
He's never given up a major league home run, Hunter Green.
That's crazy.
It's insane.
Well, that's nuts.
And what's cool is I was watching Sonny Gray pitch a couple weeks ago, and they're doing kind of a feature on showing him last year versus this year. And really what changed with him? The cutter.
Yeah.
His velocity come down a little bit, and he found a cutter. And this year he's been absolutely dominant with it. And he will start that thing to a right-handed batter on the inside, run it back over the plate. He'll start it on the edge of the plate, run it outside. And it's kind of like the days of John Lester, where like that cutter is probably going to save his career because he didn't have the same stuff as he progressed, but the cutter saved him.
Right. But
Doug's 100% right.
Yeah.
Because Nick said it, Hunter Green is totally giving up a home run this week.
You're welcome.
But the crazy thing about the John Lester comparison, which I totally agree with you, John Lester would give up his fair share of home runs because he fell in love with the cutter and it would leak over the plate.
True.
The fact that this guy throws so many cutters and he hasn't leaked them is crazy to me.
Yeah, no, it's fair because Lester he'd give a home run. You're like that goddamn cutter, stop throwing it.
He just fell in love with it, but it worked. I mean, it was a guy he'd give up a solo bomb, but then he'd shut you down for 3 straight innings.
It did. His career completely changed when he developed the cutter. It gave him that extra weapon.
Yeah. All right, let's touch on the Justin Verlander came back this week. His debut gives up back-to-back home runs in the first, and then nothing else happens in the game, and they lose 2-0.
2-0 final.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's back.
Yeah, Mets are scuffling. It's an offense that is just out of sync, out of whack. Pitching hasn't been great.
Too much talent to be where they're at.
Yeah.
There's too much talent on that roster.
Yeah.
I think you have a top manager in baseball. I think you have a much more talented team than a one game below 500. I'm not saying that. I think my expectations for the season for the Mets have changed. I don't expect them to win the division at this point. I think it's Atlanta's to lose, no question, and they're not going to lose it. And that's a team that doesn't give away ball games.
They're so good.
But I think the Mets can claw their way back into the fight of it and then land themselves one of the top 2 wildcard spots.
Yeah. I think the Mets will be there in the end because they'll figure it out. Because There's too much talent, and Buck's too good a manager. But I will say that, you know, the Miami Marlins have drifted back a little bit. They're at 17 and 18 now, tied with the Mets in second place, still at a 56 run differential. You know, they're you know, as Sean would say, water is finding its level there. They're finally leveling out to where they should be, because they've been getting away with, you know, a crime. They're still 6 games better than their record should be, and it's finally starting to settle in.
Yeah. All right, let's just slide right into that 5th inning. Favorite matchups of the past week. Now, this wasn't my favorite, but the Pittsburgh Pirates had a very tough week.
Yeah,
they got their lunch.
They came back to earth.
My boys had a tough week. Listen, they were in every single Tampa game. Yeah, they were never out of those games. They were very good ball.
It was a good series. It was a really good series.
Very good series.
And they were in none of the Toronto games.
No, that was bad. That was really bad.
Like we said kind of before we came on, was like they got the brunt end of the Red Sox series. The Pirates did, because the Blue Jays were going to go.
Blue Jays were pissed and took it to the Pirates.
Yeah, it didn't matter who the Blue Jays were going to play. They were just going to mop the floor with them.
They were mad because they got embarrassed in Boston.
Pirates did win tonight, though, 2-0. So they're back, back that way.
Well, and they're still in first place in that division. They're 20 and 15. That's still a very respectable record.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch them play. I am so excited for Friday. Yeah. Like the Pirates and Orioles games.
You know, awesome. We were originally looking forward to that game only to see O'Neal Cruz. Now we might actually see a good game.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped for that for sure. And then over the weekend, Orioles Braves. That series was
awesome.
Oh my God, so good. And if you aren't in on the Baltimore Orioles right now, you absolutely should be. This team is young. They're good. If they make a couple deals at the deadline or get somebody for, a bag of balls, which usually tends to happen, and this team's still sitting where they are, they have a very good chance to make a deep run in the playoffs.
Where do they need, like, what piece are they missing in your mind?
Would get, if you could, catching help maybe.
We still talk about
Baltimore? Like a third baseman. I think
Sean came.
I don't know. I mean, I think a lot will depend on if John Means comes back before the deadline.
Yeah,
I mean, I think they could do maybe one or a couple starters. Maybe. I mean, why not?
Reason why I ask is baseball is such a chemistry type of feel good, like just don't mess with it too much. Now, if an injury happens, then yes, of course, that's why you're like, I'm glad we got that guy for depth, and that's why we don't listen to Sean, because he's a fucking idiot. But I don't know if this team has a glaring weakness.
Yeah,
they're just such a solid baseball team.
The only thing I'd like to see the Orioles have is some kind of a veteran presence for these kids. Like I really wish that Trey Mancini had stayed. Like I feel like that's the one thing this team could benefit from, is that calming veteran presence. Like I look at what McCutchen has done in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Like I would love to see the Orioles have that kind of glue type guy on that roster for those young guys.
Someone forgot to tell McCutchen. Someone forgot to tell him that his role was to be the veteran, because he's 10 years ago.
Nuts.
Well, and he insists that part of it is he's around all these young players and he feels young again and he's excited, and he's like the mayor there, that he's constantly surrounded by people. But I think that's the one thing I'd like to see the Orioles get, is go get an experienced hitter, a Trey Mancini type, a JD Martinez type, like a guy like that can kind of help those young hitters as they get into July, August, September, and they're just in terms of prep and what it takes to get through a 162 game season. But I agree, there's no glaring holes in that team. I think that having
the Nelson Cruz special.
Yeah, exactly. A Nelson Cruz would be good.
Yeah.
Because that's the only thing I worry about with this team, is you've got a lot of really young guys that when they get into July, August, September, and they're scuffling a little, or they've played 9-10 days in a row, like they need that one person that's going to just kind of help keep them together, keep them calm.
I'm not in love with their starting pitching. I think they could get a key starter.
I mean, their starting pitching's not bad though. Like, I mean, could it be better? Sure.
But who do you bounce?
But they're right in the middle of the pack in the league, and they're not bad enough where I would be like, oh my goodness, they need an arm. But I mean, everybody would want more starting pitching.
Listen, don't get me wrong. Right. Well, that's number one. Everyone can use starting pitching. And number two, I mean, if you're going to tell me that they can go out and get Sonny Gray at the deadline, then yes, you go
Oh,
get
hell
Sonny
yeah.
Gray.
Done.
But I'm not like what I'm saying is like for a team that's rolling the way that they're playing, like to take somebody out of there to put in someone who's slightly better, like is it worth the potential mix-up? I don't know if I look at it that way, but it's going to entirely depend on who and depend on injuries. And like you said, Nick, if John Means comes back, that's essentially like getting a piece of the deadline.
That's a big addition.
Yeah.
I mean, that's essentially a trade piece.
Yeah, you get Means back, and it's like making a big trade, and you're getting that stud arm.
Yeah,
which is how the Sox will play it when Trevor Story comes back. They'll be like, hey, well, it's kind of like we made a deal.
Right.
Yeah.
After you pointed this guy out last week, Yennier Cano, my
right,
God.
Dude, he's been my. I have alerts. I follow. So I have on my phone. I have them as my favorite team, and so that I get alerts when there's pitching changes. So I get alerts when he comes in the game, so that I stop what I'm doing and put it on.
I saw him for the first time this weekend because obviously I don't get to watch Orioles games because I live in North Carolina. Makes sense. But he came in and I was like, all right, I got to buckle down, watch this.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
He throws out of this. It's not 3/4, but it is like it's a weird arm slot with spunk on it. And the movement he gets on his pitches is insane. How some of these guys even get a bat on it is crazy. I don't know.
What kills me with him is this is a guy who's 29 in his second season. Like, where the hell was he?
He came over from Minnesota in the Jorge Lopez deal.
Like, yeah, I mean, this is his second year in the league. He's 29 years old. The guy throws absolute cheese. He wasn't really good last year, and he's all of a sudden like lights out this year. The guy had an ERA of 11 last year.
He has a .13 whip this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's got a 0 ERA and a .1. He's allowed what, one base runner?
It was probably like a swing.
All of his innings,
and both of them were swinging dribblers.
I'm sorry, 2 hits. Yeah, 2 hits.
So he's pitched 16 innings. He's given up 2 hits. He's got 1 hit batter and no walks.
Yep. Yeah, he's faced 49 batters, punched out 19 of them, given up 2 hits, walked nobody.
Yeah.
But like, where the hell did this guy come from? And how is he not already a stud? I mean, here's a 29-year-old guy in his second year. He was terrible last year, and he's been absolutely lights out this year.
Yeah, he came over in the Jorge Lopez deal for Minnesota, and that's
opponents are hitting. Opponents are hitting 0.42 against him.
So whatever scout came back and said you need this guy deserves a raise.
It's filthy. It's crazy. I also heard this on the Sox and Phillies game on Fox. They were kind of talking about this, which I thought was pretty interesting. The top 5 teams last year that had the least amount of bullpen innings pitched all made the playoffs. The top 2 teams that had the least amount of bullpen innings pitched were Philadelphia Phillies, Houston Astros, both the World Series teams. Is that a coincidence? Wow. Is it your team, is always ahead, so your starters aren't getting knocked out, therefore they're pitching longer innings or more innings, I should say. Your bullpen's being used less, less.
I feel like good starting pitching always wins. I mean, I think that's the moral of the story is that you look at all those playoff teams from last year, what they all have in common, great starting pitching. I mean, that is, just like defense wins championships in the NFL, pitching wins championships in baseball. I think that, not using your bullpen is a sign of good starting pitching.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. I mean, and we also, to further that pitching wins championships point, I mean, we look at the collapse the Mets had at the end of last year, and they struggled hitting, but their pitching let them down. I mean, it was
big time.
It was a very good starting pitching team going into the postseason, and their starting pitching let them down, and they lost in the first round. I mean, that's what it boiled down to.
It's the same reason the Yankees haven't won lately because their starting pitching always caves on them in the playoffs.
Crumbles. Yep.
Always. You can't back to what we were talking about earlier. You can't out hit bad starting pitching for that long, and you really can't do it against good teams.
Well, I was just going to say, I think what it goes to show you is when you have to play, when you have to win a series against a good team that doesn't give away wins, you're not going to slug your way to those. Like you have to pitch
hard.
Well. You have to pitch well.
Yep.
Another series I had was the Diamondbacks and Rangers. Again, I've been high on the Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
They split. It was just a quick 2-game series. But they lost 6-4. The Diamondbacks lost 6-4 game 1, and then game 2 they won 12-7. I think the same thing with the Diamondbacks. Their starting pitching's a little bit inconsistent, but that lineup can hit. That they're good
and they're fun.
Team. Yeah, love them.
They just play a fun brand of baseball. And I don't expect the Diamondbacks necessarily be where they are in the end, although they might be. I mean, they've certainly outplayed expectations.
They've fallen back a little bit for sure.
They have. They've come back to reality a little bit, but I will say they play a fun brand of baseball. They've got a great young group, and if they're not a serious contender this year, they will be next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're not that far away. Kind of like the Pirates. I think the D-backs and the Pirates are two teams that are showing they're a little bit ahead of schedule in terms of that player development. And maybe this year won't be the year, but they're not that far off.
Yep. Do you guys have any other series of the week that you were struck by or surprised by?
I really enjoyed watching Oakland at Kansas City. I mean, I might have been the only person watching that game, but it was a great series. I mean, who on earth is watching these teams play baseball? Can I just ask that? I mean, I've never. I literally watched some of the KC Oakland game on, was it Thursday or Friday night?
Was it in Oakland?
And I'm like, who the hell watches these teams play? Why? Like, why does anybody watch that baseball?
Was it in Oakland?
Bobby Witt Jr. was fun to watch.
No, it was in Kansas City.
It was. I was going to say, I was like, how many people?
They were in KC.
How many people were at that game if it was in Oakland? For sure.
Oakland,
it's just bad.
Oakland games are fun because it's like Wednesday night at 10. It's like, well, I got to go to sleep to something. So like those are fun to go to sleep to.
Yeah. I need them to put me to sleep.
Yeah.
It's not good baseball.
I try to count the people on one hand that's in the stands every time the camera pans out.
Yeah.
But
yeah, the only series I'd throw out there, Dodgers, San Diego, good. San Diego, they continue to be win 2 out of 3, lose 2 out of 3, win 2 out of 3, lose 2 out of 3. That again, another team that is insanely talented and is just like bobbing above 500. They're a -4 run differential. They are about as vanilla and mediocre a team as you're going to find in baseball right now. Yep. They're not exciting. They're not a great offense. They're not great in terms of pitching. They're good. And that team is too loaded to be good. And I'm waiting for them to break out because that's a team that like we're going to look up one night and they're going to win like 8 in a row and be like, oh, there they are. Like there's the team. But man, they are just like up 1, down 1, up 1, down 1, up 1, down 1. There's just no consistency. No consistency there.
The last series I do want to touch on was Seattle took 2 out of 3 against Houston this weekend.
Yeah, it's the last one I had too. That was a good one.
That was a very good series.
And again, Seattle, another team that I thought would get off to a better start than they have, but they're coming around. Like they've been, they're 6-4 in their last 10, and they've won a couple in a row, and they've won, I want to say 4 out of 6, or like they're starting to come around. But
it's a good stabilizing manager. I mean, I think Service is calm, collected. I mean, he not a hothead, and I think a guy like that is incredibly valuable when you're a team that you're more talented than the way you're playing, and he just doesn't let them get, at least it doesn't seem like he lets them get too caught up in it, and
no,
they'll be fine. That's a good team.
And what's interesting in the West is Texas is a good team. The Angels are starting to put some things together. Seattle's starting to put some things together. Houston's beginning to fall back a little bit. Houston is very vulnerable right now.
Yeah.
In terms of the injuries, Jose Abreu looks like he's 72 years old out there.
He looks terrible.
His exit velo is down. His barrel rate is down. His bat speed is down. Like he looks like he in the offseason aged 5 years. That Astros team is very vulnerable right now, and they are not playing very good baseball.
No. And vulnerable is right. We'll get to the injuries later, but yeah,
it's not good.
All right. How about upcoming series for this next week? I got Pirates and Orioles on Friday, and I got the Mets and Nationals on Saturday and Sunday. Those are my series.
All that matters for the whole week.
Works for me, boys.
Yeah,
works for me.
No, but for real, what do you guys see?
I'm watching Tampa Baltimore right now, and I mean I've been waiting for this series for the last few days.
Yep. I mean, I think sticking with the AL West, Seattle, Texas. I mean, you got
Well,
Seattle.
they're all in division this week.
Yep. Seattle 17-17. Texas is what, 20-13, somewhere around there.
Yep.
I mean, that's, if you're Seattle, you take that series, that you're just giving yourself belief. Like, hey, we are in this. There's a lot of baseball left. Long season ahead of us. We can stick with the rest of them. We just beat Houston. We then took down the leader of the division. Like, this is our division to lose. Yep. Is essentially kind of what you tell yourself if you're Seattle. On the flip side, if you're Texas and you go ahead and win the series, and you get DeGrom going through whatever he's going through, and you're still finding ways to just win games and win series, like, you're telling yourself, like, this is our division. Houston had their time. We're back on top. Like, it's a, I don't want to say a do or die series, for crying out loud. It's the beginning of May, but a fun series.
Yeah. Also, yeah, I know you've
got Houston at the Angels, you got Texas at Seattle, you got the 4 teams that are in the race, because of course nobody counts Oakland. They're all playing in division this week, so it'll be fun to see how that all plays out.
And I know that we know this because we've seen this guy pitch in Boston, but Nathan Eovaldi is on a stretch right now. Mm-hmm. He's got I think it's 28 scoreless innings or something like that. He just went another 8 innings. Probably could have finished that game, but the Texas Rangers scored 10 in the top of the 9th, so they didn't send him back out. And he just looks dominant. Not even. It's crazy.
That was the signing in the offseason to when the big DeGrom announcement went, and he was going to Texas. And then they just a week later just snuck the Nate Eovaldi signing kind of in behind it. And then everyone's like, Texas is for real. That was kind of it didn't get enough
love, press.
It didn't get what it should have got, because this guy's a bulldog.
He is.
He is an absolute bulldog. And I mean, he will forever be one of my favorite pitchers for what he did in that 2018 World Series, that Dodger game. When he went that whole, and then he went in the next day and he's like, I want the ball. And Cora's like, you're on crack. Relax.
Right.
He is the best. Yeah. And he's the kind of guy you want on your team, because he brings that mentality, which is fuck this, we're not going to lose.
Yeah. Well, that's Eovaldi's whole career. He'll go through these stretches where he is clearly the most dominant guy in baseball. And then he'll fall back to reality for a little while. Then he'll go on another stretch where he's the most dominant guy in baseball. But there is zero quitting that dude. Zero. And he will fight through anything. When he doesn't have his best stuff, he'll give you everything he's got.
And next thing
that's the one thing.
And he saved your bullpen.
One thing I loved about him was that.
It's awesome.
He would muscle through 5-6 innings on a night he had nothing.
Yep.
And then he'd have another night where you couldn't touch it if you tried. You couldn't touch it no matter what you tried. He could have told you what he was going to throw and you weren't going to hit it. It's just how he rolls. But when in a big series or a big moment, there's not a lot of guys that I would want over Eovaldi, because he will absolutely give you everything he's freaking got.
Yeah, and he's just been on an absolute tear lately.
Yeah, I mean, he's 4-2 with a 3.22 ERA, and that ERA is only as high as it was because his first couple starts weren't good, and then he's been dominant since.
Yep. Pirates got the Orioles in Baltimore this weekend.
The Rays just shut the Orioles out 3-0 tonight.
Yeah, I mean, did you watch? You said you were watching it.
Yeah,
McClanahan was dealing. He looked awesome.
He's so good; it's not even funny.
He looked awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know.
29-7 Tampa Bay Rays. That's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Oh, Red Sox Braves.
I was just saying Red Sox Braves is the one I'm looking
Tuesday,
forward
Wednesday.
to.
Right, but still, I mean,
that's a quick 2-gamer.
That could be a test to see where our Red Sox are. I mean, there was no break in that Braves lineup. That Braves lineup is.
And the insane. Sox are throwing Pivetta versus Charlie Morton, and they're throwing Brian Bayo to be determined. The Braves haven't named a starter yet, but a good chance to see where those guys are at. I'm with Sean. I love Bayo stuff. I think that kid could be really good. He just doesn't look like he's quite major league ready in terms of
sharpness,
approach, and confidence and all that, and his sharpness. But guy's got nasty stuff.
Well, I just think he needs a little bit of polish. I mean, of course, he's a young kid. I mean, I can't believe it's when I'm not state secrets here, but he just needs a little bit of polishing. Where even on outings where he starts off sharp, innings 1, innings 2, and then he runs into a little trouble in inning 3, and it's figure out just to have that extra polish to where you get out of the inning with 1 or 2 runs rather than 4 or 5 runs.
Yep.
Like if you can just get that tweak and get that down, I mean, those are the differences that we're talking about.
Yep.
But I mean, he'll get it. His stuff is so good.
Yeah, I agree. Any other matchups this week? I mean, there's some weird ones in there too, mixed in there.
Yeah, there's some bizarre ones. I mean, the one that kind of caught my eye was San Diego versus Minnesota. Those are two teams that I think are very good teams, and are a little bit Jekyll and Hyde. It'll be fun to watch them go at it. And St. Louis, Chicago, that's always fun when they get together. Although St. Louis is terrible, and I hope they play better.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to our rounding third question, which I kind of previewed a little bit when we were leading off, is who's the first MLB manager to be fired in 2023?
Boom. No, I'm just kidding.
We got some feedback.
Not first manager who should be fired,
Yes,
but will actually be fired.
It's got to be Marmol.
Yep. Our feedback from our viewers said Mitch McFarland said Boone, with the smiley face after it. But I mean,
thank you, Mitch.
It is what it is. My father-in-law comments Jim Montgomery after the Bruins collapse, and I was like,
Jesus.
That's too soon. And then Chad Peralt said, if the Yankees don't turn it around or are even simply third in the AL East and barely a wild card team, he wouldn't be surprised if they finally pull the plug on Boone in the offseason. There has been rumbles in the last couple of years about how safe his job is. Being behind to the Red Sox right now has to be reigniting that hot seat.
So I'll say this about that. I think Boone has a serious leg to stand on in the sense that he's been playing with an injured roster all year. With that being said, I don't think he's good. I don't think I'm, again, not spilling any state secrets with how I feel about Aaron Boone. I do think I haven't watched a ton, but I've watched enough where I feel like it's fair to say I think his usage of the bullpen and the guys that he brings in at times is like, what are you doing?
His usage of Clay Holmes has been absolutely atrocious.
Like
he's the Ryan Brazier of the Yankees.
Like you got a guy like Michael King. You got a guy like Michael King in there.
Yep.
And then you don't bring him in until the game's already been you've already blown the save. Now you bring Michael King. I don't.
And Michael King's slider was like 9 feet.
I was going to say that dude throws absolute frisbees up there.
Yeah, but it's not right. Looks like a boomerang.
But the Yankees will never fire him in season.
Not in season.
If they move on from him, it will be after the season, after a horrific playoff exit. If they make the playoffs like that, they'll never do it in season. I think it's got to be Marmol.
I agree.
I mean, this is a team that we thought was going to win the division, let alone make the playoffs, and there's 3 teams in baseball that have a worse record than them. It's like Detroit. I mean, I'm sorry. It's Oakland. It's Kansas City, and then them, right?
Yeah. They have 11
Isn't that
wins.
Right?
They have 11 wins. There's nobody that's less than that other than Oakland and Kansas City, I don't think.
Oh, I mean, that's bad.
That's really bad. For a franchise like that and a team with that much talent, there's no excuse for it.
I think in terms of managers that deserve to be fired, I think Marmol's on that. All indications are the organization really loves him, and they're not looking to make a move on him. It's only his second season. So I think that given how they've done, I agree with you guys. I think he's absolutely a candidate to get fired. But I actually think the manager that goes first will be AJ Hinch in Detroit. The Javi Baez situation is bad. The young players are not developing.
However,
the pitching staff.
Javi Baez has hit like 600 since he was benched.
He has, but he'll do something stupid again in a week, and it'll be back where it was.
Javi Baez hitting 600 since then is just because he's run into a bunch of hanging sliders. I mean, that's what it is.
I mean, it's fair.
Yeah, I think the guy that goes first is probably Hinch because he came in with the pedigree. The young players are not developing. The Baez situation is bad. The young pitchers are also not developing. I just feel like if you're looking for a guy who's not done what they hoped, I would say AJ Hinch is probably that guy.
A good call. They just sent Spencer Turnbull down to AAA.
Yeah, I saw that. What the?
Spencer Torkelson. That might go down as one of the worst draft picks in
Oh my
Major League
goodness.
Baseball history. And I picked him last year to win Rookie of the Year because I thought he raked at Arizona State.
He did.
And I'm like, this is a guy that's
and he hit well in the minors too. I mean, the guy has hit everywhere he's been except for the major leagues.
And it's terrible.
Bad.
And maybe you're right. I mean, maybe if this is we got to break it. Maybe his career just takes off when AJ Hinch is gone. AJ Hinch is a good call from you, I think.
There's some rumblings that there's not a good fit there, and there's not a lot of alignment with the direction of that organization. And I think they thought Hinch would come in with his pedigree and turn that around. I think the players are not responding to him. The young guys are not developing. And honestly, like when you look at AJ Hinch's body of work, the Astros, those young guys came up. They all came up together.
Well, let me ask you this then. And I know you're not a huge fan, Harrison, but the question must be asked. How big of a role did Alex Cora actually play in Houston over AJ Hinch?
Well, I think looking at the performances, I think you have to argue that that Cora was a very big part of that staff. And the rumors, the credit, Hinch always shared credit with Cora and how important he was. But I think what we're finding is that Cora went into a rebuild and has done all right through it.
Mm-hmm.
Hinch went into a rebuild and he's not
tanked.
found footing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there is definitely something to those guys being together. People are going to say, well, he cheated while he was there. That's why he's not performing. Okay, whatever. But I do think that he took an Astros team of young players that had all come up together that already knew each other, already played well together, and they were already kind of meshed. Whereas in Detroit, he's trying to bring a team together and he's not able to do it. And those are different. Mm-hmm. When you're trying to just integrate guys that already know each other, much easier than when you're trying to bring a group of guys that don't know each other together.
Yeah,
sure.
I did bring up, I know he's a first-year manager. It probably won't happen, but Grifol in Chicago.
That's a bad situation.
I think just the team in general is in shambles. I don't think it's necessarily his fault. I don't think it's.
He's made some rookie manager mistakes for sure,
which is fine.
And it doesn't have to
happen.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be his fault in order to get fired. But I look at a team that has been underperforming for 5 years, regardless of who's been the manager. And this is a team in an organization that needs a complete culture shift. It's
big time.
And you can't get a culture shift by bringing in a new manager every year. So you got to pick your guy that you like, preferably a young guy that's going to, struggle, but stick with it. And to me, Grifol's in this for the long haul.
Yep.
Like this has minimum 4 years written all over it, and then reevaluate.
And that's fair. Yeah. Fair.
And I was going to make the same point. I think Chicago's got an organizational problem, not a manager problem. This is an organizational problem, and they've been a mess for a number of years. They've underperformed for a number of years. They've always been they've always kind of teased you. They were there, but then they weren't. But that's deeper than just the manager. And I do agree with you, Sean. I think they put Grifols in because they think he's the right guy.
Yeah.
But you're not going to determine the right guy in 30 games. You got to give that guy.
No,
seasons.
But again, talk about a team that's underperformed. We get roster boners looking at that team every offseason. Like that team is so
loaded.
Good. Like why don't they win? So,
I started to wonder about them when you saw guys that were no longer running balls out. You saw some quit late in games. Like you're looking at it going, is that a manager problem? But then you saw a lot of that kind of clean itself up very quietly. Whereas then you got St. Louis with Oli Marmol calling the guys out in press conferences, and that kind of blew up in his face. So I think both organizations are going through some massive growing pains. I just think they're a little different.
See, I think the White Sox are going to have a lot of turnover here. They got in 2024, Grandal's a free agent, Hendricks is a free agent, Joe Kelly's a free agent, Giolito's a free agent, Kopech's a free agent. Well, Andrews,
a bunch of guys that have been.
That's when Jimenez comes off the books. That's when Tim Anderson comes off the books. Kendall Graveman comes off the book. Like, there's going to be some turnover. Yohan Moncada comes off the books. Like, there's going to be some turnover the next 2 years for the White Sox.
And honestly, I think for the White Sox, you're in a situation where you've got a farm system that's, not great. You do have some guys in it that are promising, but you've also got a lot of guys at the major league level that just haven't
performed,
turned out to be what you hoped. Yeah. Like Moncada's teased you with some great performances and then some really weak ones. Kopech's got great stuff, but he can't seem to piece it all together. Like they've had these guys that had these big expectations that have just not quite lived up to them. But they seem to get those guys. It's that over and over and over again. Like they're consistently just falling short.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, well, we'll see. I mean, Joe Girardi got fired in the first week of May last year, so we will see. What about the Phillies manager, real quick? I know it's his second year, but Phillies are underperforming. I know Bryce Harper was out. That's a big catalyst. That dude's an absolute freak. Just comes up and just
Well,
a homer already.
I'll say this. It's a team that's underperforming because it's a team that went on a deeper run last year than anyone ever expected.
Fair.
And so they went to the World Series and they lost. Now, I'm not saying that expectations this year were wrong, but the team is struggling.
Yeah.
They'll see their way through it. It's just there's some key guys. I mean, Harper's missing. Key guys are just not necessarily performing all that well. Castellanos had a real slow start to the year. He's starting to hit the ball better. I think they'll be fine. Again, they're not going to win the division. I think Atlanta's probably going to kind of run away with that.
Yeah.
But I still think Philly's going to get one of those wild card spots, and you get to that point in September, that's going to be a team you're not going to want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and the Phillies offense has been middle of the pack.
Except for Brandon Marsh. Brandon Marsh hasn't gotten out in the month of April.
Yeah, dude, I know.
Well, and you've had Bohm had a great start to the season, and Stott's been great, and you've had these these stretches where some guys have been really, really good, but
don't forget
their pitching has been horrendous. Bottom 5 in the league.
Don't forget, I mean, the loss of Rhys Hoskins right before the year starts. Hoskins, huge. I mean, Jesus, I mean that's
a big one.
Huge.
Yeah, big
so.
One.
Yeah, and that moved Bohm to first. That put Edmundo Sosa at third. Like it shuffled that whole entire lineup. It was a big domino effect for sure.
It did, yeah. And the Rhys Hoskins loss is probably one we haven't talked about enough. And I think you're right, Sean. That he was a veteran guy, leader in that clubhouse. Kind of a consistent presence, and he's not there. And Trey Turner's been good for stretches. They haven't had a really good stretch of games, but they're pitching. Kind of like the Red Sox, they are consistently behind in games. The difference is the Red Sox are finding ways to win. The Phillies are just consistently coming up short.
Yeah. All right, let's head home. We have pretty much all I have for heading home today is injury news, and then players of the week and players of the month came out. Lou Trevino, another Yankees pitcher, goes down with Tommy John. He's done.
Dropping left and right.
Carlos Rodon suffers a major setback. Something in his setback in his back is completely messed up. They don't know.
And they're saying this is like a chronic back issue that is not necessarily going away.
Yeah. They don't know what it's exactly. They have zero timetable for it. They have no idea. Yankees starter Luis Garcia, ever since he couldn't rock the baby. What did I say?
You said Yankees, but Astros.
I meant Astros. Sorry.
Yeah.
We just figured it's another Yankees injury. It's
fine. Yeah. So, couldn't rock the baby. Now he needs Tommy John.
And you got Urquidy on the IL. I mean, that team. You got Altuve, who's still out with no real timetable. Still, like we said earlier, this team is vulnerable. And they could be in a spot where they're gonna lose some of these guys, for quite a while, and they could end up in a spot where they're sitting in third or fourth place, trying to make up some ground here late in the season, which is a spot they haven't been in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely insane. And then Germán Marquez, the ace for the Rockies, he's going down with Tommy John. So
the Rockies have an ace?
Not anymore.
Sorry, couldn't help myself.
But yeah,
that's another manager to keep an eye on.
As far as getting fired?
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah.
I just don't. There's just zero expectation in Colorado.
There is, but I feel like at some point you got to just chuck the hand grenade and start over.
Yeah, shit or get off the pot. I mean, I don't disagree.
And honestly, that team consistently doesn't pitch, and they brought him in for that.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And then Eloy Jimenez for the White Sox is out 4 to 6 weeks because he had an appendectomy. I've been there. They're not fun.
Yeah, that
But
stinks.
he'll be back 4 to 6 weeks. So
Well,
nothing.
and right in your core, like every twisting thing you do in baseball, that affects.
Yep. And then I got players of the week this year. This week, players of the week this year. That's not a thing. Players of the week this week. Obviously Yoshida. I mean, I don't have the stats right on me. But his week was ridiculous. He had like
I don't think he got out, so it
it
doesn't
was
matter.
like 486, 4 homers,
Yeah, it was
something
crazy.
RBIs. And then Sean Murphy for the Braves got player of the week.
Boy, and he hit a couple of balls that I don't think have landed yet. I mean, there were
No.
some absolute missiles.
And then your
So I got him if you want him, Nick.
Okay, go ahead. Let's hear him.
So he had 6 games, 27 plate appearances. He hit 480, OBP of 519, slugged 800 with an OPS of 1320. He had 2 home runs, 2 doubles, 8 RBIs, 1 walk, no Ks.
No Ks.
No
Good
Ks
God.
in a week.
My goodness.
In the meantime, everyone in the Yankees K'd like 17 times last week.
Crazy. Then we got players of the month for the month of April. No surprise here. The AL was Matt Chapman. He had an OPS of 1.152. He already had a 2.0 WAR. He had a 67.1 hard hit rate. The guy was barreling everything up. It was, it was just absolutely insane.
Yeah, even when he got out, the ball was a rocket.
Yeah. And then for the NL, also kind of no surprise, Ronald Acuna Jr. 352, 440, 546 slash line.
And he looks healthy finally. Like he looks like he's Ronald Acuna Jr. again.
Yep. 13 stolen bases. And no player had more multi-hit games during the first month than Acuna did. He had 13 multi-hit
And then that
games.
rocket he threw from the outfield too.
Oh my God, to get him at third, my God, that
thing had a vapor trail behind it.
Insane. So those are your players of the week, players of the month. Do you guys have anything to add from this week?
I think we covered it all, man.
Nice.
Just the in the Cleveland-Detroit game earlier today, if you guys haven't seen the Akil Baddoo play, go take a look.
My goodness.
He was stealing second, and the throw goes down, and it hits him in the bag, and then the shortstop catches the ricochet off of him and then tags him. It was like he gets hit in the area, and then he's still out stealing base. It was terrible. Poor luck for Akil Baddoo. But the angles of the replay are pretty cool because camera angles are everywhere now. So Akil Baddoo, take a look it up. It was the poor guy. I've never seen it though. I mean, I've watched a billion baseball games in my life. I've never seen that.
And that's what we were saying the other night was it just seems like we see something new every time we turn on a baseball game. And the kid's stealing, he takes it literally off the body without hitting anything.
It hit something.
It ricochets into Jimenez's glove and just tags him for the caught stealing. It's just insane. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yep.
But
I will add something real quick. I saw an article today, and I meant to put it on the Facebook page, but there were some renderings released of what a new MLB stadium would look like in Orlando if they can get the Rays to move.
Get them to move to Orlando, huh?
Yeah, there's actually there's renderings released of a domed baseball stadium right in downtown Orlando. It looks like some kind of a joint venture with the Orlando Magic owner. I can't think of his name now. But they are trying to lure the Rays out of Tampa, but keep them in Florida, move them to Orlando.
They're just
which is only about an hour away.
They're just gonna pick up Tropicana Field and move it.
Hopefully they're gonna run a couple of bulldozers through that bad boy and make it go away.
I hope they still keep the roof in play. That'd be fun.
I've got to say, I used to travel to Tampa a lot for work, and I've caught several games down there. That stadium is awful to watch a game in. The lighting is terrible. The ambiance is terrible. It's such a bad place to watch a game.
I've not been there yet, but
don't go. It's not worth it.
Well, I got to get it to get to my 30 stadium, so I'll be going at some point.
Well, wait till they move to Orlando. They got a nice new place for you.
Yeah, right. That's like if I wait long enough, I'll go to Vegas instead of Oakland. So
yeah,
kind of waiting for that one too. But all right, so like we said before we wrap up, I am driving to Baltimore Friday to pick up these two clowns from the airport. We are watching the Pirates against the Orioles on Friday night. And then Saturday is the 4:05 game, Mets against the Nationals. We will probably do a podcast Saturday night with us all together. So keep your eye out for that. I'm sure we'll be posting pictures and videos. I know I want a picture with Brooks Robinson at some point here. So, I mean, we're going to be, out having fun and around the ballpark. So keep your eyes peeled. The rounding third road trip, baby, RT squared this weekend. So we might not be on next Monday. Depends on how we're feeling at that point. But we'll definitely let you guys know, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, we're getting in really late Sunday night, Monday morning. So Monday night might be a reach.
Absolutely. So just thanks for watching. Thanks for chiming in tonight. Please like, subscribe, share the podcast. You can listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. All right. And we will see you, like I said, this weekend. All right.
Probably over the weekend.
So we'll see y'all then.
Yeah. We'll see y'all from the Mid-South.